Old Crow Yukon declares climate change state of emergency. We're seeing birds up in our community we have never seen before. Their migrations are changing, the snow is changing, the rivers are changing. Everything is changing right in front of our eyes.
Here's a summary of the article.
Officials in the Yukon's most northern community have declared a state of emergency, saying the traditional way of life in Old Crow is under threat from climate change. It's going to be the blink of an eye before my great-grandchild is living in a completely different territory, and if that's not an emergency, I don't know what is, said Dana Tizya Tram, chief of the Vuntut Gwitchin First Nation, after a ceremony marking the state of emergency May 19. Tizya Tram said climate change is dramatically altering the landscape of Old Crow, directly putting his people's culture in jeopardy. We are seeing birds up in our community we have never seen before. Their migrations are changing, the snow is changing, the rivers are changing. Lorraine Netro, a member of the Vuntut Gwitchin First Nation and an environmental advocate, said she's scared about what could happen if people don't start working now to reverse the effects of climate change. Tizya Tram is working closely with Kluani Adamek, the Yukon Regional Chief for the Assembly of First Nations, to bring other Yukon First Nations on board. Gwich'in delegates from communities across the north will travel there to share their concerns about climate change, the welfare of the porcupine caribou herd and food security.
This post received a score of 3,894, with an upvote ratio of 95%. Here are the top comments in response to this article.
This comment that I think needs to be spread like wildfire. Firstly, this means that the carbon already emitted will take 40 years to reach its full potential. As the planet warms, the oceans cannot absorb as much CO2. Methane, which works on scales of hundreds of years instead of thousands but is much more effective at heating, will be released more and more on large swaths of land as time goes on.
Greater than in many ways, we're feeling the emissions of the 80s right now. Sweet Jesus. What are my 50s and 60s going to be like 40 years from now? 10x the forest fires, floods, storms? How many animals will there be?
I am afraid of that too. Currently I am just 17 and when I try to tell my family about impending doom they just laugh me off. Boy, I can't wait to see a large famine before I finish college.
Product shortages are going to come first. For the U.S., staples like coffee and fruit will become unavailable, or in such shortage that the price will be sky-high. We'll resort to chemically processed alternatives. It'll be the beginning of the global food supply chain being broken apart.
Thank God people are liking coffee alternatives more and more. It will help with real bean availability. If that fails, people will definitely start to grow it in greenhouses.
A little more warming and they won't need greenhouses.
Amidst all this I'm supposed to be eager to work a dead-end office job with my university education till I die since I probably won't be able to retire. We'll all be hyper-fucked in 35 years.
Sadly so fucking true.
Winter is definitely warmer in Canada now, I can tell by how early the fucking bugs start swamping my front and backyards.
In Canada as well, the concerning thing for me is a lack of bugs, wildlife. I remember when I was little, I would go on walks and the ground would look like it was moving because of all the grasshoppers. Bees used to be everywhere, now I never see them.
Yep. I said the same thing higher up in the thread too. It's crazy to think of my childhood versus the insect population I see or don't see now.
100% agree, was just telling the wife this yesterday.
Use reusable bags when you grocery shop. The average American family takes home almost 1,500 plastic shopping bags a year. Shopping at charity shops helps charities, so don't think you're stealing from the needy. Reddit tends to get down on nonprofit groups, but you can find plenty of well-run groups.
Those suggestions are very good for emission reduction and environment protection but does not address the main problem that the world uses the equivalent of 3 per year. We need a new power source that is clean but as cheap, safe, dispatchable, universal, widely abundant and reliable as coal. It is not completely clear what power source has all these properties but there's a good chance that nuclear power, specifically, is the best candidate. I strongly believe that if we don't reduce society's mostly irrational fear of nuclear energy, then we'll have a very difficult time combating climate change.
This video was automatically created by Reddit to speech. The article and comments in this video were selected from Reddit according to their upvotes, and any paraphrasing was performed by smmry.com, without any human intervention.